Hi, I'm Eka Capiotis. I'm very excited to be here on behalf of the Front Royal Women's Resource Center. We have a lively group tonight. We've already been chatting away here for the last half an hour, and I'm very happy to have Christine Andreae, author, artist in a number of different realms, here tonight to talk about her Inanna project. So, Christine, you have a website, ChristineAndreae.com.
That's right.
And it should be linked under the video if anybody wants to take a look. Feel free, while the video is running, to, if you're watching through Facebook, to add any comments, to do any likes, anything that you'd like to say so that we can share that all together. So, without any further ado, Christine, we're excited to see what you've got here.
Okay.
We've heard how you do it. Now we get to see the goods.
Well, let me start by telling the story. And we started out, this is the first print I did, and it's the opening of the Sumerian poem called Inanna's Descent. And the opening line of the poem is, "From the great above, Inanna opened her ear to the great below." So the question is, what did she hear? And what made her want to go down to the great below? But nobody is quite, scholars debate that. But most people think that she went down to, she heard her sister, who was queen of the underworld, her sister's name was Ereshkigal, grieving over the death of her husband, Gulgana, I think his name was. He was called the Great Bull of Heaven. So that's the next one in the series is Ereshkigal grieving over the Great Bull of Heaven.
Are we going to pass these around?
Well, or you could just put them up there. Well, I don't know,
Okay.
however you want to do it. She decides to go down into the underworld. She puts on all her, Inanna puts on all her regalia, her crown, her jewelry, her robe, to make this descent. And before she goes, she calls her best friend, her warrior, because Inanna was a warrior as well as a pretty aggressive lover. She was not passive in her appetites, let me put it that way. She was known for her appetites. So she puts on all her regalia and goes, starts down, but before she does, she calls her warrior, her advisor, whose name was Ninshabur, and says, "If I don't come back in 3 days, I want you to go around to all the gods and get them to rescue me, because I'm a little nervous about this, but you know, I trust that you'll do this." And the woman said yes, that she would do that. So the next one is I imagined Inanna on the brink, and I imagined it as a spiral going down. Those are my feet. Cleaned up, mind you, without corns and crooked toes. So she goes on down and she gets to the first gate. And she says, well, first she says, "Now don't forget the words I've commanded you to," in Schubert. When she arrives at the outer gate of the underworld, she knocked loudly. She cried out in a fierce voice, "Open the door, gatekeeper, open the door, I alone would enter." So the gatekeeper says, "Well, who are you?" And she says, "I am Inanna, queen of heaven, on my way to the east." And the gatekeeper said, "If you were truly Inanna, queen of heaven, on your way to the east, why has your heart led you on the road from which no traveler returns?" And she says, "Because my older sister, Ereshkigal, her husband, Gugalana, the bull of heaven, has died. I have come to witness the funeral rites. Let the beer of his funeral rites be poured into the cup. Let it be done." So I don't know if you knew, but the Sumerians were practically the inventors of beer. They drank a lot of beer. I didn't know that. So the gatekeeper goes to Ereshkigal and reports and says, "My queen," to Ereshkigal, "a maid as tall as heaven, as wide as the earth, as strong as the foundations of this city wall, waits outside your palace gates. And on her head she wears the crown of the steppe. On her forehead her dark locks are carefully arranged. Around her neck she wears the small lapis beads. At her breast she wears the double strand of beads. Her body is wrapped in a royal robe. Her eyes are daubed with an ointment called Let Him Come, Let Him Come." Very seductive. Around her chest she wears around her chest she wears a breastplate called "Come, Man, Come." On her wrist she wears a gold ring, and in her hand she carries the lapis measuring rod and line. And I think that was like a scepter, kind of a symbol of her rule, the lapis. And lapis was a big item for the Sumerians. It was very sacred stone. So Ereshkigal gets angry. She slaps her thighs and bites her lips, and she doesn't quite know what to do. But she says, let her come in, but one at a time at each gate. She has to shed some of her garments. So at the first gate, she loses her crown. So, and each gate I made a little different. That one is sort of looked like a more formal. They made their temples out of mud bricks, and they used the herringbone pattern often. I didn't do the next two. I didn't do the small bead necklace and the double strand of beads, but the next one was her breastplate that she takes off. So I looked at a lot of armor. You know, it was hard to get so that it didn't look like something from Victoria's Secret. And then the last, then she gives her gold ring up, her lapis measuring rod, and then finally she sheds her royal robe. And that one, to me, it sort of came out. I wanted this as an idea of going into a cave, because it was getting cruder and cruder in my mind as you're going down from sort of architecture all the way down into the center of the earth. And as I did that, after I'd sort of done it, I thought, oh my goodness, that it does look like she's going into a womb. You know, it does. I didn't realize that at the time as I was doing it, but afterwards it sort of. So that's the kind of discovery that you sometimes make when you're doing these things. You go, wow, that's interesting. So she, oh yes, okay, here we are. So naked and bowed low, Inanna entered the throne room of her sister. Ereshkigal rose from her throne, and Inanna started towards the throne. The Anuna, the judges of the underworld, surrounded her. They passed judgment against her. Then Ereshkigal fastened on Inanna the eye of death. She spoke against her the word of wrath. She uttered against her the cry of guilt. She struck her. Inanna was turned into a corpse, a piece of rotting meat, and was hung from a hook on a wall. So, not clear. It wasn't clear to me. It's still not entirely clear to me why Ereshkigal was so angry that her sister came, and why the judges. You got it. Is that the meat hook one? Yeah. Yeah, and I, I go online and I start looking at pictures of meat hooks. Sort of thing. Now, what does a meat hook look like? Well, that's what it looks like. Don't forget, Ereshkigal was grieving, was angry, so maybe she felt this was an intrusion, that her sister was coming all in her finery. Was also one of the rules that nobody's supposed to go down to the underworld. You know, if you go down there, you don't come back. So the poem goes on. After 3 days and 3 nights, Inanna had not returned, and Ninshubur set up a lament for her by the ruins. She beat the drum for her in the assembly places. She circled the houses of the gods. She tore at her eyes. She tore at her mouth. She tore at her thighs. She dressed herself in a single garment like a beggar. Alone she set out for Nippur and the temple of Enlil. Now Enlil was the god of the sky and the air. So she's going to start making her rounds, going around to the different gods. She goes to Enlil and says, you know, don't let your daughter be put to death in the underworld. Do something. Do not let your bright silver be covered with the dust of the underworld. Do not let your precious lapis be broken into stone for the stoneworker. Do not let your fragrant boxwood be cut into wood for the woodworker. Do not let the holy priestess of heaven be put to death in the underworld. And this guy god is not sympathetic. He's sort of annoyed. He says, look, she got what she deserved. She shouldn't have gone down there. So then Shibur goes on to and the temple of Nana, who was the moon god, who was also, if not the father, then the grandfather of Inanna. And she begs the same spiel there. Do not let your daughter be put to death in the underworld. And the father, Nana, answered angrily, my daughter craved the great above. Inanna craved the great below. She who receives the may of the underworld does not return. She who goes to the dark city stays there. And he wouldn't have either. So finally she goes to the temple of Enki, and she enters the holy shrine of this god, who is the water god. And the Sumerians believed that instead of the world being created out of a void, that in the very beginning there was water, and it was out of all this water and this sea that the world and the gods and the world as they knew it was created. So the water god was pretty powerful. Also, Inanna had a relationship with him that was from another poem, an earlier poem where she gets him drunk and takes the gifts of civilizations, drunk on beer, mind you, and she takes the gifts of civilization, and he lets her have all of them, and they're called May and E. And I'm not quite sure what all those gifts are, but anyway, he had given her these, or she had stolen them from him. But he is upset that she is going to be put to death in the underworld. He says, what has my daughter done? Inanna, queen of all the lands, holy priestess of heaven, what has happened? I am troubled, I am grieved. And so he digs his fingernails into the river bank. We could get the river god out now, I think. This was my portrait of the river god, and I did it as a heart because he was the one god that had sympathy and love for Inanna, and that his love was like a river. That actually ended up sort of looking like, after I did it, I realized it was kind of like the curve in the Shenandoah where we live, that sort of those curves. Anyway, he digs his fingernails down into the dirt, and from the dirt underneath his fingernails he fashions 2 little creatures, and they are, the poem is clear that they have no sex, but they're sexless little mud creatures, and he tells them, go down into the underworld like flies, creep in through the gates, and when Queen Ereshkigal is grieving, mirror her grief. When she says, oh my head, you say, oh your poor head, and when she says, oh my belly, you say, oh your poor belly. So they do this, they go down into the underworld. Here is the little creatures. Like flies, they slip through the gates. They entered the throne room of the underworld. No linen was spread over her body. Her breasts were uncovered. Her hair swirled around her head like leeks. She was moaning, oh, oh, my inside. They moaned, oh, oh, your inside. She moaned, oh, oh, my outside. They moaned, oh, oh, your outside. Your belly, my back, your back, your back. My heart, my liver. Ah, your liver. And the liver was the final great moment of sympathy, Ereshkigal stopped. She looked at them. She asked, "Who are you? Moaning and groaning and sighing with me. If you are gods, I will bless you. If you are mortals, I will give you a gift. I will give you the water gift, the river in its fullness." And they said, "We do not wish it." She says, "I'll give you the grain gift, the fields in harvest." And they said, "We do not wish it." "What do you want?" "We wish only the corpse that hangs from the hook on the wall." Ereshkigal said, "The corpse belongs to Inanna," they said. "Whether it belongs to our queen, whether it belongs to our king, that is what we wish." The corpse was given to them. They sprinkled the food of life on the corpse, they sprinkled the water of life, and Inanna arose, and here she is, arising. So you can see in that one that I purposely didn't ink the top very well to give it a feeling of light at the top. I also left a lot of the chatter in carving her body because she's been dead, you know. I kind of figured she was going to be unblemished. And clinging to her are the demons, because the rule, the law of the underworld is that whoever leaves has to send a substitute back down. You can't, it would be unbalanced. So these demons are accompanying her to make sure that they take somebody down with her. Let's see, this is the poem. As she ascended from the underworld, the Gala, the demons of the underworld clung to her side. The Gala were demons who know no food, who know no drink, who eat no offerings, who drink no libations, who accept no gifts. They enjoy no lovemaking. They have no sweet children to kiss. They tear the wife from the husband's arms. They tear the child from the father's knees. They steal the bride from the marriage home. The demons clung to Inanna. It says some of them were small and some of them were big, the size of high picket fences. So, and they process, they go around, and they first come up, and the first person they see is Ninshubur, the faithful warrior assistant advisor. And this woman has been grieving and is in deepest mourning. She's torn with her fingernails, torn her cheeks and torn her hair, and is wearing sackcloth and is rolling around in the dirt, grieving and moaning in mourning. And when she sees Inanna, she throws herself at Inanna's feet. And the demons say, "Walk on, Inanna, we'll take Ninshubur in your place." And she says, "No way, you can't have her." So on they go to the next temple, and they see her son, or one of her sons, whose name is Shara, I think, yes, Shara. And he too has been in mourning and is wearing sackcloth and covered with ashes. And he throws himself at her feet. He's so overjoyed at her presence. And the Gala said, "Walk on to your city, Inanna. We will take Shara in your place," she says. "No, not Shara. He is my son who sings hymns to me. He is my son who cuts my nails and smooths my hair. I will never give Shara to you." "Walk on, Inanna," they told her. "We will accompany you to the next shrine." And they go to the next shrine called Bat Tirbira, where Lulal, another son, was dressed in a soiled sackcloth, grieving for the loss of his mom. And when he sees her surrounded by the demons, he throws himself in the dust at her feet, and they say, "We'll take him." And she says, "No, he's my son. He's a leader among men. He's my right arm. He's my left arm. I will never give Lulal to you." So on they go. We will go to the big apple tree in Europe. In Europe, by the big apple tree, Dumuzi, the husband of Inanna, was dressed in his shining May garments. He sat on his magnificent throne. He did not move. The Gala seized him by his thighs. They poured milk out of his 7 churns, because he was a shepherd as well as her husband. They broke the reed pipe which the shepherd was playing. Inanna fastened on Duzumi the eye of death. She spoke against him the word of wrath. She uttered against him the cry of guilt. Take him. Take Kazumi away. Well, you know, he wasn't grieving for her. He had taken over her throne. Here he was sitting there in all his splendor while she'd been down in hell. And so they gotta take him. They make him stand up. They make him sit down. They beat the husband of Inanna. They gashed him with their axes. He let out a wail. He raised his hands to heaven, to Utu, who was a sun god and the god of justice, and beseeched him. Oh, Utu, you are my brother-in-law. I am the husband of your sister. I brought cream to your mother's house. I brought milk to Nigal's house. I am the one who carried food to the holy shrine. I am the one who brought wedding gifts to Uruk. I am the one who danced on the holy knees, the knees of Iguana. And he says, help me, change my hands into hands of a snake, change my feet into the feet of a snake. Let me escape from the demons, do not let them hold me. So they accepted the god does change it into a snake, and they couldn't hold it, and they got him away. And that's the same, that's this one that we've been passing around. So it looks as if, a bit as if he's afraid of being a snake, but actually what he's afraid of is the demons. So that's a little ambiguous, that one. Okay, so are we gonna, do you want to take a break?
Yeah, and let me show the actual woodcut that you did, because that's also interesting. So this is the actual cut, right? Or one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the poem, The Descent of Inanna. We can continue with the next part, but I know that you want to wind it up.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
Yeah, I guess
You're
we
welcome.
have a little bit of time. Are there any questions? I mean, so far on this, or I think maybe one or two questions on this?
Christine, how did you decide which parts of the poem you were actually going to carve?
Well, I was thinking sort of visually what you know, for example, on the 7 gates that she goes through, I wasn't sure I wanted to do a neck with little beads on it. The crown was more appealing. So I think a lot of the times it had to be what image, what was going to look good or what would be fun to draw. Other times it was just sometimes, and you'll see in the next part of the poem, I got a little buzz from reading the poem. I thought, maybe that's it. So I'd sketch and do it. So sometimes it was a calculated decision that it's going to look good or be more fun, and other times it was, let me try that.
Any other questions?
I was thinking it was so nice of you beforehand to tell us the process. And I'm assuming that there are people out there that would love to know, at least in a shortened version, your process for Facebook Live. So I thought maybe you could share with them the process of woodblock.
Sure. Well, basically, you take a block of wood. It can be, I use plywood, so it would look like this. And you have a drawing. You transfer the drawing onto the block, and then you carve it. And then you roll out some ink all over it. Put the paper down on top of it, and then you take one of these. You open that. It's called a baran. Just a disc like this. And the paper's lying here, and you go around and you press to get the ink to soak into the paper.
This is just regular plywood?
It's Japanese plywood.
Okay.
It's very, very fine grained. You know, it would be fun, and Janet and I talked about doing this, of using different woods that have a more pronounced grain, so that you got, you know, a feeling of the grain in the back. But for these, I wasn't quite sure. This is beginners.
Yeah, okay. I wonder, because I thought, you know, when you said plywood, you got this at Lowe's? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I really appreciate you coming. We're going to stay. We're going to stay and keep chatting. But I did want to turn it over to Barbara Wade, because there are some announcements about you? There are things coming up.
Yes, there are. There's a lot of things. I think I'll probably just sit since we have a full house, which is really nice. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is the Front Royal Women's Resource Center Women Gathering. We do it on the third Thursday of every month, although we're not doing November and December for obvious reasons. We also have our Women in Networking, and that's coming up next Wednesday. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month. And we've got all sorts of stuff for, we've got our annual meeting, so I want to invite everyone here and everyone who are members to come to our annual meeting, which is Thursday, November 16th at Samuel's Library. And we'll have a short business meeting, and then we'll do a lot more of what we do here, which is, drink wine and eat, which we like a lot. We'll have a holiday gathering too coming up, a Blue Wing Frog, and that is Thursday, December, Lee, tell me. 14th, thank you. All right, the 14th. The only other thing I really wanted to let people know, since we have a lot of members here, is we've had some interesting developments this year, and we just want to share with you that one of the things that's happened is we have lost our United Way funding, and that really does help us in giving our Dare the Dream grants out. And it's, so that's something we're going to be working hard to try to replace, but we want to share with you that this is just really important to us, and we hope we'll be sending out our letter in our annual appeal in about a month. And just please keep that in mind, and whatever you can share and whatever you can donate to help that, we would really appreciate it. And I think that's it. Am I forgetting anything else?
How was your yard sale?
Oh, we did great. We did great. We made over $1,500 at our yard sale, which is for us an all-time high. And I think we all had a fabulous time. It was last weekend. And we've been doing an annual yard sale every year. And this year we were able to do it at Weikart, right on John Marshall Highway. And we do it during Festival Leaves. And the weather was perfect. So we were outside and we had a great time, and we sold like crazy, and yeah, so thank you everyone who helped and participated. I mean, it was really fun, and it's all, it's made possible by all of you who come and, help us set up and, sell, and so thank you. So that was a great success.
And donate stuff.
And the donations were out of the roof this year. They really were. That really made a difference. So yeah, so next year you can start saving your little items. So that's it. Thank you.
So, and one of the really fun things about the yard sale is that people name their own price.
They do.
So, people are very generous because they know that we're supporting women and girls in Warren County and Front Royal. So I'd like to thank Christine very much for
great
being
pleasure.
here. Like I said, we're going to continue, but thank you very much for taking your time to watch this with us, and we'll hope you join us sometime in the future. Please check out frwrc.org or frwrc on Facebook for more information. And don't forget to join so you can be part of it too. Thank you very much.